The moment their hands touched, Lucas Hayes knew his carefully constructed life was about to shatter. For 3 years, he'd survived by following one rule: don't let anyone in. Not after what happened to Emma, not with Oliver to protect. But tonight, sitting inches from Ava Sterling, the woman who'd quietly invaded his world with her midnight conversations and stolen glances, that rule felt like a prison he no longer wanted to live in. What he didn't know was that Ava had secrets of her own, secrets that made her just as terrified of this moment as he was. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey takes us. The apartment was too quiet. Lucas had learned to live with silence. In fact, he'd built his entire existence around it. Structured, predictable, safe. At 32, his life moved like clockwork. Wake at 6, get Oliver ready for school, work his shift at the architectural firm downtown, pick Oliver up at 3:30, dinner at 6, bedtime routine at 8. Rinse and repeat. No surprises, no deviations, no room for pain. Tonight followed the same script. Oliver had crashed around 8:15, sprawled across his bed with one arm hanging off the side and his favorite dinosaur tucked under his chin. Lucas had stood in the doorway longer than necessary, watching his son's chest rise and fall, counting breaths like he'd done every night since Emma died. Still here, still breathing, still okay. The living room felt cavernous after he closed Oliver's door. Lucas dropped onto the worn leather couch, the one piece of furniture he'd kept from before, and stared at the television without really seeing it. Some cooking competition. Bright lights, enthusiastic hosts, people passionate about things that didn't matter. He kept the volume low, just enough to fill the space. The knock came at 9:47. Lucas knew the exact time because he'd been checking his phone obsessively, scrolling through work emails he'd already read, avoiding the real reason sleep wouldn't come. The sound made him freeze mid-scroll. Nobody knocked this late. Not Mr. Patterson from 3B, who usually complained about noise before sunset. Not the building super, who'd given up on non-emergency visits months ago. Nobody except, Lucas, it's Ava. I know it's late, but her voice carried through the door, soft and uncertain. Lucas felt something tighten in his chest, that same uncomfortable pull he'd been fighting for months now. He should pretend he was asleep, should ignore it, like he ignored most things that threatened his carefully maintained equilibrium. Instead, he opened the door. Ava Sterling stood in the hallway wearing an oversized gray cardigan that swallowed her frame and dark jeans that looked lived in. Her auburn hair was pulled into a messy bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. No makeup, no pretense. Just Ava, looking tired and real and somehow more beautiful than any carefully composed version of herself. "Hey," she said, offering a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I made too much soup. Again." It was a lie. They both knew it was a lie. Ava had been accidentally making too much food every few weeks for the past year, showing up with containers of soup, pasta, casseroles, things Lucas never had to think about, just heat and serve. Things that made Oliver light up because they tasted like someone gave a damn. "You don't have to," Lucas started. "I know I don't have to." Ava shifted the container in her hands. "But I did anyway, so you might as well take it before my arms give out. This thing weighs more than it looks." Lucas stepped aside, gesturing her in. She'd been inside before, plenty of times actually. Somewhere along the way, the neighbor from across the hall had become something more. Not a friend exactly, because Lucas didn't really do friends anymore, but not a stranger either. Something in between, something undefined and therefore safe, except it didn't feel safe tonight. Ava moved through his space with familiar ease, setting the container on the kitchen counter. Chicken and wild rice? Oliver mentioned he liked it last time. "You remember what my 6-year-old likes?" "I remember what everyone likes." She shrugged, but there was something vulnerable in the gesture. "It's kind of my thing. Useless superpower." Lucas leaned against the doorframe, watching her. The kitchen light caught the gold in her hair, made her skin look warm. She seemed smaller somehow, like she was trying to take up less space than she actually occupied. "Want some coffee?" The words escaped before he could stop them. "I was about to make a pot anyway." Another lie. He wasn't going to make coffee. He was going to sit in the dark until exhaustion finally won, same as every night. But Ava smiled, really smiled this time, and nodded. Yeah, coffee sounds good. They settled into an easy rhythm. Lucas measured grounds and water while Ava leaned against the counter, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something light and clean, like rain. She talked about her day, vague mentions of meetings and calls that never quite revealed what she actually did for a living. Lucas had stopped asking months ago. Everyone was entitled to their privacy. God knew he guarded his own fiercely enough. "How's Oliver doing?" Ava asked as the coffee maker gurgled to life. "Good. Great, actually." Lucas pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet. He got a gold star on his spelling test. Made me quiz him for an hour the night before. Of course he did. Kid's brilliant. He is, isn't he? Lucas felt the familiar swell of pride mixed with terror. Oliver was brilliant, too smart, too observant, too good at reading the things Lucas tried to hide. Sometimes I think he's smarter than both of us combined. I don't doubt it. Ava accepted the mug he handed her, their fingers brushing for just a second. That's when it happened. The touch was accidental, innocent even, just skin against skin, the kind of casual contact that happened 100 times a day between strangers on the subway. But Lucas felt it like an electric shock, sharp and sudden, and impossible to ignore. His breath caught. Time seemed to slow, stretching the moment into something heavy and significant. Ava's eyes widened slightly. She felt it too. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. The coffee maker beeped, loud in the sudden silence. Lucas pulled his hand back like he'd been burned, wrapping his fingers around his own mug just to have something to hold on to. "Sorry," Ava said quickly. "I didn't mean to." "No, it's fine. It's nothing." The lie tasted bitter. "Let's sit." They migrated to the living room, settling on opposite ends of the couch, with careful distance between them. The TV still played its meaningless drama. Lucas muted it, and the silence rushed back in, more oppressive than before. Ava curled into the corner of the couch, knees pulled up, looking smaller again. She held her coffee like a shield. "Can I ask you something?" Lucas's entire body tensed. Questions were dangerous. Questions led to answers, and answers led to truth. And truth was the one thing he couldn't afford. But he nodded anyway. "Do you ever feel like you're holding your breath?" Ava stared into her mug like it held answers. "Like you're waiting for something to happen, but you don't know what, and you're terrified it might actually come?" The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. Yes. Yes, he felt exactly like that. Every single day, every single moment, walking through life like he was made of glass, one wrong step away from shattering completely. "Sometimes," he managed, "I hate it." Ava's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I hate feeling stuck. I hate feeling like I can't move forward because I'm too scared of what moving forward might cost." Lucas wanted to ask what she was afraid of. Wanted to know what kept someone like Ava, confident, capable, seemingly put together Ava, trapped in the same kind of paralysis that defined his existence. But asking meant offering something in return, and he had nothing to give. Nothing he was willing to give. "We all have our reasons," he said instead. "Do we?" Ava looked at him then, really looked at him, and Lucas felt exposed. "Or do we just tell ourselves that because it's easier than taking a risk? Risks aren't always worth it. How do you know unless you try?" "Because I already tried." The words came out sharper than intended. "I tried, and it didn't work out, and I'm not doing it again." Silence crashed between them. Lucas immediately regretted the outburst, but he couldn't take it back. Couldn't unsay what was already out there, hanging in the air like smoke. Ava set her mug down carefully. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed." "You didn't push. I just—" Lucas dragged a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. "I have Oliver to think about. That's all that matters." "I know." Ava's expression softened. "You're a good dad, Lucas. Anyone can see that." The compliment made him uncomfortable. He didn't feel like a good dad most days. He felt like someone playing a role, going through motions, desperately trying not to screw up the one perfect thing in his life. "I'm trying," he said quietly. "That's all any of us can do." They fell into silence again, but this time it felt less hostile. More like 2 people sitting with their shared wounds, neither quite ready to expose them fully, but acknowledging they existed. The clock on the wall ticked toward 11. Ava should leave. Should take her empty coffee mug and her probing questions and retreat to the safety of her own apartment. Instead, she stayed curled on the couch, looking like she belonged there. That scared Lucas more than anything. "Tell me something," Ava said after a while. "Something real." "Like what?" "Anything. Just something you don't usually say out loud." Lucas considered lying, considered deflecting with some meaningless truth that wouldn't cost him anything. But when he looked at Ava, really looked at her, he saw the same desperation in her eyes that he felt clawing inside his chest. She wasn't asking for entertainment. She was asking for connection. "I'm terrified every single day that I'm going to fail him," Lucas admitted. "That one day Oliver's going to wake up and realize he deserved better than a dad who's just barely holding it together." Ava didn't flinch, didn't offer empty reassurances or tell him he was wrong. She just nodded, like she understood completely. "I'm terrified people will find out who I really am," she said softly. "That all the things I've built will come crashing down the second someone sees past the surface." "Who are you really?" Ava smiled sadly. "I'm not sure anymore. I think I forgot somewhere along the way." Lucas wanted to tell her he understood that too. Wanted to say he'd lost himself years ago, buried under grief and responsibility and the weight of keeping everything together. But the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he shifted slightly closer. Not much, just enough that the distance between them felt less like a canyon. Ava noticed. Her breath hitched, just barely, and Lucas wondered if her heart was racing the way his was. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "I know. We should probably." "Yeah." Neither of them moved. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Lucas could smell her perfume again, stronger now, could see the way her fingers trembled slightly around her empty mug, could feel the pull between them like gravity, impossible to resist even though he knew he should. Ava set the mug on the coffee table and turned to face him fully. "Lucas, A soft sound from down the hall cut her off. Both of them froze, heads turning toward Oliver's room. The sound came again, a small whimper, the kind that preceded a nightmare. Lucas was on his feet in an instant, dad mode overriding everything else. "I should go," Ava said gently. "I'll wait here." He hesitated for just a second, then moved down the hall. Oliver's door was ajar, and Lucas pushed it open slowly. His son was tangled in his sheets, face scrunched up, making small, distressed noises. "Hey, buddy." Lucas sat on the edge of the bed, placing a gentle hand on Oliver's shoulder. "You're okay. Just a bad dream." Oliver's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and scared. "Dad?" "Right here. I've got you." "There was a monster in the closet." "No monsters in there. Want me to check?" Oliver nodded, still half asleep. Lucas went through the familiar ritual, opening the closet, looking under the bed, checking behind the door. All clear, like always. By the time he returned to the bed, Oliver was already drifting back to sleep. "Love you, bud," Lucas whispered, pulling the blanket up. "Love you too, Dad." Oliver's words slurred together, consciousness already slipping away. "Is Miss Ava still here?" The question caught Lucas off guard. "Yeah, why?" "She's nice. She smells like cookies." Lucas smiled despite himself. "Yeah, she does. You should marry her." "What? Oliver?" But his son was already asleep again, breathing deep and even, the nightmare forgotten. Lucas sat there for a moment, processing the innocent statement that felt like a bomb dropped into still water. "You should marry her," out of the mouths of babes. Lucas returned to the living room to find Ava exactly where he'd left her, still curled on the couch. She looked up when he entered, concern etched on her face. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just a nightmare." Lucas sank back onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "He's fine now." "Good." They sat in silence again, but it felt different now. Heavier. Loaded with all the things they weren't saying, all the possibilities hanging in the air between them. "I should go," Ava said finally, but she didn't move. "You don't have to." "I know, but I should." She uncurled slowly, reaching for her empty mug. "It's late, and you have work tomorrow, and I'm keeping you up with my existential crisis." "I don't mind." Ava paused halfway to standing, looking at him with those searching eyes again. "Don't you?" "No." Lucas surprised himself with the honesty. "I don't." "Why not?" "Because you make the silence less suffocating. Because when you're here, I remember what it feels like to be something other than broken. Because you scare the hell out of me, and I can't figure out if that's a good thing or the worst thing possible." "Because you're easy to be around," he said instead. Ava smiled, but there was sadness in it. "You're a terrible liar, Lucas Hayes." "I'm not lying. Maybe not. But you're not telling the whole truth either." She stood fully now, smoothing down her cardigan. "It's okay. I'm not asking you to." Lucas stood too, following her to the door. Every step felt weighted, like he was walking towards something inevitable. Ava paused with her hand on the doorknob, turning back to face him. "Thank you," she said softly, "for the coffee, for listening, for not thinking I'm crazy." "I don't think you're crazy." "Good. Because I think we're both a little bit lost, and maybe that's okay." She reached up, and for a heart-stopping moment, Lucas thought she might touch his face. Instead, she grasped the door handle more firmly, putting necessary distance between them. "Good night, Lucas." "Good night, Ava." She slipped into the hallway, and Lucas watched her walk the few steps to her own door. She glanced back once before disappearing inside, and something passed between them. Understanding? Maybe. Or recognition. Two people standing on the edge of something they weren't ready to name. Lucas closed his door and leaned against it, heart pounding for no reason he wanted to acknowledge. The apartment felt emptier now, like Ava had taken some essential oxygen with her when she left. He cleaned up the coffee mugs mechanically, stored the soup in the fridge, went through the motions of his nightly routine. But his mind kept replaying the evening, the accidental touch, the vulnerable conversations, the way she'd looked at him like she could see straight through every wall he'd built. Dangerous, she'd called it. She was right. Lucas checked on Oliver one more time before heading to his own room. His son slept peacefully now, all traces of the nightmare gone. So innocent, so trusting, so completely dependent on Lucas to keep the world safe and predictable. "You should marry her." Lucas stripped down to his boxers and climbed into bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark. Sleep felt miles away. His mind raced, cataloging every moment of the evening, analyzing every word, every glance, every weighted silence. He'd been so careful for so long. 3 years of maintaining distance, of keeping people at arm's length, of making sure nothing and no one could threaten the fragile stability he'd created. 3 years of telling himself it was for Oliver's sake, that his son needed consistency and safety more than Lucas needed connection. But tonight had cracked something in that carefully constructed armor. And the worst part, the truly terrifying part, was that he wasn't sure he wanted to fix it. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Lucas grabbed it, squinting at the bright screen. A text from Ava. "Thank you for tonight. Sleep well. Simple. Innocent. Absolutely devastating." Lucas typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "You too." He set the phone down and rolled onto his side, pulling the blanket up. But sleep still wouldn't come. His mind kept drifting across the hall, imagining Ava in her own apartment, maybe lying in her own bed, staring at her own ceiling, wondering the same things he was wondering, feeling the same fear he was feeling. The clock ticked toward midnight, then past it, and Lucas lay awake in the dark, listening to the silence and trying not to acknowledge what it meant that tonight, for the first time in 3 years, the silence felt less like safety and more like loneliness. Something had shifted, something fundamental and irreversible. And as much as Lucas wanted to pretend tomorrow would be just like yesterday, safe, predictable, controlled, he knew better. The walls were cracking, and he had no idea how to stop it, or if he even wanted to anymore. Morning came too soon, and not soon enough. Lucas woke to sunlight stabbing through the gap in his curtains and Oliver's voice singing something off-key in the kitchen. He checked his phone. 6:17. 3 minutes before his alarm. Close enough. He rolled out of bed feeling like he'd been hit by a truck, every muscle protesting the 2 hours of sleep he'd managed to scrape together. His mind had finally shut down around 4, exhausted from replaying the same scenes over and over. Ava's fingers against his, the way she'd looked at him like she understood, Oliver's sleepy voice saying things 6-year-olds shouldn't have the insight to say. The shower did nothing to clear his head. Lucas stood under scalding water, trying to wash away the feeling that something fundamental had changed last night, knowing it wouldn't work but trying anyway. By the time he made it to the kitchen, Oliver had already poured himself a bowl of cereal and was methodically picking out all the marshmallows to eat first. The efficiency of it would have made Lucas laugh on a normal day. "Morning, bud." Oliver looked up, milk on his upper lip. "You look tired." Thanks. You look like you're eating pure sugar for breakfast. It's got vitamins, says so on the box. Oliver pointed to the nutritional information with his spoon. See? Vitamin D, iron, zinc, all the important stuff. Pretty sure the important stuff is getting buried under food coloring and corn syrup. But it tastes good. Lucas couldn't argue with that logic. He poured coffee from the pot he'd set on auto brew, the same pot he and Ava had shared 12 hours ago. The memory hit him harder than it should have. Dad? Yeah? Can Miss Ava come to dinner again soon? Lucas's hand froze halfway to his mouth. She was just here last night, Oliver. I know, but I like when she's here. The apartment feels different. Different how? Oliver scrunched up his face, thinking hard. Less quiet, but like good quiet, not sad quiet. Lucas set his mug down carefully, processing his son's words. When had Oliver started distinguishing between types of quiet? When had he become so perceptive about the emotional temperature of their home? We're not sad, Lucas said, but even to his own ears it sounded defensive. I didn't say we are. I said the quiet is. Oliver went back to his cereal, apparently satisfied with this distinction. Miss Ava makes it better. Lucas didn't know how to respond to that, so he didn't. He made toast he didn't want and checked his phone for emails he didn't care about and tried not to think about the fact that his 6-year-old had just articulated something Lucas had been avoiding for months. Ava made things better. That was the problem. The morning routine proceeded normally. Teeth brushed, backpack packed, shoes on the right feet after 2 attempts. They were out the door by 7:40, right on schedule. Lucas held Oliver's hand as they walked down the hallway toward the elevator, and he absolutely did not look at Ava's door. The elevator dinged open. Empty. Good. Except as the doors started to close, a hand shot through at the last second, triggering the sensors. The doors bounced back open, and Ava stepped inside, slightly breathless. Sorry, didn't mean to. Oh. Her eyes met Lucas's, and something passed between them that made his stomach flip. Hey. Hey, Lucas managed. Miss Ava. Oliver launched himself at her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Ava laughed, steadying herself against the elevator wall. Good morning to you too, Oliver. Someone's energetic today. I had the marshmallow cereal. Dad says it's basically candy. Your dad's not wrong. Ava caught Lucas's eye over Oliver's head, and he saw the same exhaustion he felt reflected back at him. She hadn't slept either. The elevator descended in awkward silence, broken only by Oliver's chatter about a field trip to the Science Museum next week. Ava listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made Oliver light up with importance. Lucas watched the interaction and felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. Oliver had never been like this with anyone else. Not Lucas's co-workers when they'd tried to make small talk at the company picnic. Not his teacher, despite Mrs. Chen's best efforts. Not even Emma's parents, who Oliver barely remembered. But with Ava, he was open, trusting, happy in a way that went beyond his usual cheerful baseline. The lobby doors opened and reality crashed back in. Lucas had to get Oliver to school, then himself to work, then survive 8 hours of pretending everything was normal before doing the whole thing in reverse. I've got to run, Ava said, pulling her bag higher on her shoulder. Early meeting, but Oliver... She crouched down to his level. Good luck on that spelling quiz today, okay? I know you'll do great. How did you know I have a spelling quiz? You told me last week, remember? You were worried about the word necessary. Oliver's face lit up. Oh yeah, it's got 1 collar and 2 sleeves. Exactly, see? You've got this. Ava stood, ruffling his hair, then glanced at Lucas. Have a good day. She was gone before he could respond, disappearing through the lobby doors into the street beyond. Lucas stared after her, that uncomfortable feeling intensifying. She remembered my quiz, Oliver said, wonder in his voice. Yeah. Lucas took his son's hand again. She did. They walked to school in relative silence, Oliver humming to himself while Lucas's mind churned. By the time he dropped Oliver off and made it to work, he felt wrung out and the day had barely started. The architectural firm occupied 3 floors of a glass and steel building downtown. Lucas had worked there for 7 years, the last 3 in a fog of competence that kept him employed but not particularly noticed. He liked it that way. Invisibility was safety. Hayes, his boss, Margaret, caught him at his desk before he'd even logged in. Conference room, client presentation in 10. I thought that was Thursday. Client moved it up. We're pitching the community center redesign. You're on it, right? Lucas scrambled mentally through his project list. Community center. Right. The one he'd been avoiding because it involved designing spaces for families, for connection, for all the things that made his chest tight. Yeah, I'm on it. Good. Bring your A game. They're picky. The presentation went fine. Lucas knew his stuff, could talk about load-bearing walls and natural light and ADA compliance in his sleep. The clients nodded in the right places, asked the expected questions, seemed satisfied. But as he walked through the design, the open gathering spaces, the family resource center, the playground visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, all he could think about was what Oliver had said. The apartment feels different when she's there. Less quiet. But like good quiet, not sad quiet. Mr. Hayes? One of the clients, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, pulled him aside after. I just wanted to say, this design feels personal. Like you understand what we're trying to create here. Lucas forced a smile. Just doing my job. No, it's more than that. These spaces, they're designed for healing, for bringing people together. That comes from somewhere real. She was right, though she didn't know it. The design did come from somewhere real, from everything Lucas wished he could give Oliver but was too scared to reach for. Community, connection, the courage to be vulnerable. He mumbled something appropriate and escaped back to his desk, throwing himself into CAD drawings that didn't require emotional investment. The hours crawled by. Lunch was a protein bar eaten at his desk. Afternoon was a blur of emails and revisions and avoiding the kitchen where people gathered to chat. At 3:15, his phone buzzed. A text from the school. Oliver's teacher would like to speak with you at pickup today. Lucas's stomach dropped. Those words never meant anything good. He fired back a quick response confirming he'd be there, then spent the next 15 minutes spiraling through worst-case scenarios. Oliver was hurt. Oliver was in trouble. Oliver had said something about their home life that triggered concern. He left work early, not caring what Margaret thought, and practically ran the 8 blocks to the school. The afternoon pickup line was already forming, parents clustered in groups, chatting easily. Lucas stood apart, scanning for Mrs. Chen. She found him first. Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming. Is Oliver okay? Oh, he's fine. Physically fine. Mrs. Chen gestured toward the building. Walk with me? They moved away from the other parents, and Lucas's anxiety ratcheted up another notch. Oliver's been different lately, Mrs. Chen said carefully. More withdrawn during free play. He used to engage with the other children, but the past few weeks he's been keeping to himself. Lucas felt defensive walls slam into place. He's always been a bit introverted. I know, and that's fine, but today during circle time we were talking about families, and she paused, choosing words carefully. He said something that concerned me. What did he say? He said his family used to be bigger, but now it's just him and you, and sometimes he worries you're lonely. The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. He opened his mouth, closed it, had no idea what to say. Mrs. Chen's expression softened. Mr. Hayes, I'm not trying to pry into your personal life. I just want to make sure Oliver's processing things in a healthy way. Grief is complicated, especially for children. We're fine, Lucas said automatically. I'm sure you are. But if Oliver's picking up on something, loneliness, isolation, whatever it might be, he might benefit from talking to someone. The school counselor is excellent, very gentle with, "We don't need a counselor." The words came out harsher than intended. Lucas took a breath, tried again. I appreciate the concern, but we're managing. Mrs. Chen looked like she wanted to push, but thought better of it. All right, just know the resource is there if you change your mind. Oliver's a wonderful boy, smart, kind, empathetic. I just want to make sure he's okay. He is, I promise. Oliver appeared then, backpack bouncing, face bright. Dad! Guess what? I got 100 on my spelling quiz. Miss Ava was right about the collar and sleeves thing. Lucas felt Mrs. Chen's curious gaze but ignored it. That's great, bud. I'm proud of you. They walked home through streets busy with after-work traffic, Oliver chattering about his day. Lucas tried to focus, tried to be present, but his mind kept replaying the conversation. Sometimes he worries you're lonely. Was he that transparent? Had he been so focused on keeping Oliver safe that he'd missed the fact his son could see right through him? The apartment building loomed ahead. Lucas felt the familiar weight settle over him as they entered the lobby, rode the elevator up. Home. Safety. The place where he could stop pretending. Except tonight, it didn't feel like safety. It felt like a cage. "Can I watch cartoons before dinner?" Oliver asked as Lucas unlocked their door. "Half an hour, then homework." Oliver dropped his backpack and made a beeline for the TV. Lucas stood in the kitchen, staring at the container of soup Ava had brought, still sitting in the fridge. He should heat it up for dinner, should be grateful someone cared enough to think of them. Instead, he felt suffocated. His phone buzzed, another text from Ava. "How was your day?" Simple question, normal question. The kind of thing friends asked each other, but Lucas stared at it like it was written in a foreign language. How was his day? His day was a reminder that he was failing his son, that his carefully controlled life wasn't actually controlled at all, that the walls he'd built were transparent to a 6-year-old. He typed back, "Fine. Yours?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Long. "Can I come over later? I could use the company." Lucas should say no. Should maintain the boundaries he'd established, protect the space he'd created. Should remember all the reasons getting close to anyone was a terrible idea. "Sure? After Oliver's asleep?" "Perfect. I'll bring wine." Lucas set the phone down and pressed his palms against the counter, breathing slowly. This was fine. This was just neighbors being friendly. Nothing had to change, except everything already had. Dinner was the soup, which Oliver devoured while telling Lucas everything he'd learned about metamorphosis in science class. Homework was math worksheets that took 20 minutes and testing tomorrow's spelling words. Bath time was a negotiation about whether action figures counted as bath toys. Bedtime was 3 stories instead of 2 because Oliver deployed the puppy dog eyes. By the time Lucas closed Oliver's bedroom door, it was 8:45 and his nerves were shot. The knock came at 9. Ava stood in the hallway with a bottle of red wine and an expression that matched exactly how Lucas felt. Exhausted, uncertain, like she was making a decision she couldn't take back. Hey. Lucas stepped aside. "Come in." She moved past him, and he caught that same clean scent from last night. Rain and something floral. She'd changed into leggings and an oversized sweater that hung off one shoulder. Her hair was down, falling in loose waves. Lucas realized he was staring and looked away. "Glasses?" Ava held up the wine. "Cabinet above the sink." They went through the motions. Wine poured, spots claimed on the couch. TV turned on to something neither of them cared about. But the ease from last night was gone, replaced by a tension that made the air feel thick. Ava took a long sip of wine. "I've been thinking about last night." Lucas's grip tightened on his glass. "Yeah? About what I said. About feeling like I'm holding my breath." She stared at the TV without seeing it. "I don't usually talk like that. I don't usually let people see that side of me." "Why did you?" "I don't know. Maybe because you don't ask for anything." Ava glanced at him. "Everyone always wants something from me, but you've never asked." Lucas didn't know what to say to that. He took a drink, let the wine burn down his throat. "Your turn," Ava said. "My turn what?" "To tell me something real. That's how this works, right? We trade truths until one of us gets scared and runs away. That's a depressing way to look at friendship." "Is that what this is? Friendship?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither of them seemed ready to address. Lucas set his glass down carefully. "I don't know what this is," he admitted. "Me neither." Ava curled her legs under her. "But I know it scares me, and I know I keep coming back anyway." "Why?" "Because the alternative is worse." She said it simply, like it was obvious. Being alone in my apartment, pretending I'm fine, going through the motions, that's worse than being scared. Lucas understood that more than he wanted to admit. The loneliness of his apartment, the weight of silence, the endless cycle of just getting through each day, it was familiar, yes, but familiar didn't mean good. "Oliver's teacher talked to me today," he heard himself say. "She's worried about him, said he's been withdrawn lately." Ava's expression shifted to concern. "Is he okay?" "She thinks he's picking up on the fact that I'm lonely." Lucas laughed bitterly. "My 6-year-old is worried about my emotional state. That's how well I'm doing." "Lucas," No, she's right. He is picking up on it. This morning he said the apartment feels different when you're here, less sad. Lucas met Ava's eyes. A 6-year-old shouldn't have to think about whether his home feels sad. You're being too hard on yourself. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I've built this entire life around keeping him safe, and all I've done is teach him to recognize loneliness. Ava reached across the space between them, her hand covering his. The touch sent electricity up Lucas's arm, just like last night, but this time neither of them pulled away. You're a good father, Ava said firmly. You're doing your best in an impossible situation. That's all anyone can do. What if my best isn't enough? It is, trust me. Her thumb moved slightly against his knuckles, probably unconscious. Oliver's lucky to have you. Lucas looked down at their joined hands. This was dangerous territory. He should pull away, reestablish distance, remember all the reasons he couldn't let anyone in. But her hand was warm, and the contact felt like oxygen after drowning. Tell me something about you, Lucas said quietly. Something real. Ava hesitated, then, I'm not who you think I am. What do you mean? I mean, she stopped, struggling with words. The person you see, the neighbor across the hall who makes too much soup and shows up at random times, that's real. But it's not the whole picture. So tell me the whole picture. I can't. Ava pulled her hand back and Lucas immediately missed the contact. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know. Why not? Because once I tell you, things change. And She gestured vaguely between them. This, whatever this is, I don't want to lose it. Lucas understood that fear intimately. The fear that honesty meant loss, that vulnerability meant pain, that letting someone see the truth meant giving them the power to destroy you. You won't lose it, he said, surprised by his own certainty. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll try not to run. Ava studied him for a long moment. What if I told you I've been lying to you since the day we met? Lucas's heart stuttered. About what? About everything. About who I am, what I do, why I live here. Ava's voice dropped to barely a whisper. About why I keep showing up at your door when I should just stay away. Why do you keep showing up? Because you're the only person in my life who doesn't want anything from me. Because when I'm here, I can just be Ava, not... She stopped again, shaking her head. I'm not explaining this well. Try. Ava took a shaky breath. I have money, Lucas, a lot of money, more than anyone should have. And my whole life is built around that. People who want things from me, opportunities I'm supposed to care about, responsibilities I never asked for. And it's exhausting. Lucas processed this information slowly. Money explained some things. The fact that Ava didn't seem to work regular hours, the expensive-looking bags she sometimes carried, the way she'd paid for dinner the few times they'd gone out with Oliver without blinking. Okay, he said finally. So you have money, so what? Ava blinked. So what? Yeah. Is that supposed to change something? It changes everything. People treat you differently when they know. They want things, expect things, assume things. I don't want anything from you, Ava. I thought you just said that's why you keep coming back. She stared at him like he'd spoken in another language. You're not angry I didn't tell you? Should I be? We all have things we don't share. Lucas picked up his wine again. I never told you how my wife died, never told you why I can't sleep most nights, never told you about the panic attacks I used to get so bad I couldn't leave the apartment. Used to? They're better now, mostly. He took a drink. Point is, we're all carrying stuff. Doesn't mean we're lying, just means we're human. Ava's eyes were bright, and Lucas realized with a start that she might cry. He wasn't prepared for that. Didn't know what to do if she actually broke down. But she didn't. Instead, she laughed, a wet, shaky sound that was half relief, half disbelief. You're really something, Lucas Hayes. So I've been told. He paused. For what it's worth, I don't care about your money. I care that you remember Oliver's spelling quizzes and bring us soup and show up when you're lonely, because being lonely sucks. It really does. They sat in silence, but it felt different now, lighter somehow, like a pressure valve had been released. Can I ask you something? Ava said after a while. Sure. Why haven't you dated anyone? In the 3 years since... She didn't finish the sentence, but Lucas knew what she meant. Because I can't. The answer came easily, truth he'd accepted long ago. I barely survived losing Emma. I can't do that again. Won't. So you're just going to be alone forever? Not alone. I have Oliver. That's not the same thing. It's enough. Lucas heard how hollow the word sounded. It has to be. Ava shifted closer, close enough that he could feel warmth radiating from her. What if it doesn't have to be? Ava, I'm not saying anything has to happen. I'm just saying, what if you let yourself imagine it, just for a second? What if you let yourself want something? Lucas's heart was racing. This conversation had veered into territory he'd specifically avoided for years. Territory marked with warning signs and caution tape and every defense mechanism he'd developed. But Ava was looking at him with those searching eyes, and he was so tired of being afraid. I do want something, he said quietly. What? This. Lucas gestured between them. Whatever this is, I want it to keep happening. That's it? That's enough, more than enough. Ava smiled, sad and understanding. Okay. Okay? Yeah, we can do this. Whatever this is. She settled back against the couch, but she was still close, closer than friends usually sat. No pressure, no expectations, just this. Lucas felt something loosen in his chest. Relief, maybe. Or hope, though he wasn't ready to call it that yet. They finished the wine slowly, talking about safer things. Ava told him about growing up with money, the weird isolation of it, never knowing who actually liked her versus who liked what she represented. Lucas told her about Emma, carefully, editing out the hardest parts, but more than he'd told anyone in years. It felt good, dangerous and terrifying, and good. Around midnight, Ava stood to leave. Lucas walked her to the door, and they stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to end the night. Same time tomorrow? Ava asked. Lucas should say no, should put some distance between tonight and whatever came next, should remember all his rules about keeping people out. Yeah, he said instead, same time tomorrow. Ava smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. She touched his arm briefly, just her fingers against his forearm, barely a second, then slipped out into the hallway. Lucas closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding for reasons he didn't want to examine too closely. The rules were breaking. He could feel it happening, like ice cracking under weight. And the truly terrifying part was that he wasn't sure he wanted to stop it anymore. Tomorrow came, and the day after, and suddenly a week had passed in a blur of evening visits that felt less like coincidence and more like necessity. Ava showed up every night around 9, sometimes with wine, sometimes with nothing but herself, and that look in her eyes that said she needed this as much as Lucas did. They talked. About everything and nothing. About Oliver's obsession with dinosaurs and Ava's complicated relationship with her family. About Lucas's job and the projects that actually mattered versus the ones that just paid bills. About movies they'd seen and books they'd started but never finished, and all the small ways life disappointed you when you weren't paying attention. But they never talked about what they were doing, never addressed the fact that this thing between them had shifted from neighborly to something else entirely. Something without a name, without rules, without any clear destination. Lucas told himself it was fine, told himself they were just friends, that he had everything under control, that nothing had to change. Then Friday night happened. Lucas was running late, picking up Oliver from after-school care. A client meeting had gone long, then longer, and by the time he made it to the school, it was nearly 6. The guilt sat heavy in his chest as he jogged through the doors, already rehearsing apologies. Oliver was the last kid there, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a book, pretending not to care. But Lucas saw the relief flash across his son's face when he appeared. Sorry, bud, meeting ran late. It's okay. Oliver closed the book carefully, not meeting Lucas's eyes. Mrs. Martinez said you'd come eventually. The words stung more than they should have. Lucas signed the checkout sheet, thanked the exhausted-looking aide, and guided Oliver out to the street. The walk home was quieter than usual. Oliver dragged his feet, his earlier energy completely depleted. You hungry? Lucas asked. We could grab pizza on the way home. Not really. Come on, you love pizza. I said I'm not hungry. Oliver's voice carried an edge Lucas rarely heard. Can we just go home? They made it back to the apartment in tense silence. Oliver dropped his backpack by the door and disappeared into his room without another word. Lucas stood in the kitchen, staring at nothing, feeling like he'd failed some crucial test he didn't know he was taking. He knocked on Oliver's door. "Hey, can we talk?" "I'm reading." "Oliver?" A pause, then, "Come in." Lucas pushed the door open. Oliver sat on his bed, the same book from earlier open in his lap, but his eyes were red-rimmed. "You've been crying." "No, I haven't." "Oliver." "I said I haven't." Oliver's voice cracked, betraying him. He scrubbed at his eyes angrily. "Just leave me alone." Lucas's heart twisted. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to crowd his son. "Talk to me. What's going on?" "Nothing." "That's not true." "Why do you care?" The words exploded out of Oliver with surprising force. "You're always late now. You're always on your phone. You're always somewhere else even when you're here." The accusation hit Lucas like a physical blow. "That's not fair." "Yes, it is. You used to read me stories and play dinosaurs and actually pay attention. Now you just sit on the couch and stare at nothing." Oliver's voice dropped to a whisper. "Just like after Mom died." Lucas felt the air leave his lungs. He opened his mouth, closed it, had no idea what to say. Because Oliver was right. He had been distracted, had been somewhere else mentally, had let his focus drift from the one thing that should always come first. "I'm sorry," Lucas managed. "You're right. I've been distracted." "Is it because of Miss Ava?" The question caught Lucas completely off guard. "What? I'm not stupid, Dad. I know she comes over every night after I go to bed. I can hear you talking sometimes." Oliver picked at the corner of his book. "Are you going to marry her?" "What? No, we're just friends." That's what grown-ups always say when they like each other. Oliver looked up and his eyes were so earnest it hurt. "It's okay if you like her. I like her too. She's nice." Lucas didn't know how to navigate this conversation. Didn't know how to explain something he barely understood himself. "It's complicated, bud." "Why?" "Because—" Lucas stopped, searching for words a 6-year-old could understand. "Because when you care about someone, there's always a chance you could lose them. And losing people hurts. Like we lost Mom." "Yeah, like we lost Mom." Oliver was quiet for a moment, processing. "But we have each other, and that's good, right? Even though we lost Mom." "Of course it's good. You're the best thing in my life." "So maybe having Miss Ava around would be good too. Even if there's a chance." Oliver said it so simply, like the logic was obvious. Being scared all the time is worse than taking a chance. Lucas stared at his son, wondering when he'd gotten so wise. When had Oliver learned to articulate things Lucas struggled with? When had he developed this clarity about risk and fear and the cost of protecting yourself? "When did you get so smart?" Lucas asked quietly. "I've always been smart. You just don't always listen." Oliver set his book aside. "I'm sorry I got mad." "No, you were right to get mad. I have been distracted. That's on me." Lucas pulled Oliver into a hug. "I'll do better. I promise." Oliver hugged him back fiercely. "Can we have pizza now? I'm actually really hungry." Lucas laughed despite everything. "Yeah, we can have pizza." They ordered in and ate on the couch, watching some animated movie Oliver had seen a dozen times. Lucas tried to focus, tried to be present, but his mind kept replaying the conversation. Being scared all the time is worse than taking a chance. Out of the mouths of babes. Around 8:30, Oliver started drooping against Lucas's side, fighting sleep and losing. Lucas carried him to bed, tucked him in, and stood in the doorway watching his son's breathing even out. His phone buzzed. "Ava, can I come over? I know it's earlier than usual, but I really need to not be alone right now." Lucas stared at the message, Oliver's words echoing in his head. This thing with Ava, whatever it was, had started to mean something. Had started to feel like something worth protecting, worth risking for. "Give me 20 minutes to make sure Oliver's really asleep. Then come over." He cleaned up the pizza boxes, straightened the living room, checked on Oliver twice more. At exactly 9 o'clock, the knock came. Lucas opened the door, and his breath caught. Ava stood in the hallway completely soaked, hair plastered to her face, mascara running in dark streaks down her cheeks. She was shaking, from cold or emotion, Lucas couldn't tell. Maybe both. "Can I come in?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Of course." Lucas pulled her inside, closing the door behind her. What happened? Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm not fine. I don't know. Ava wrapped her arms around herself, dripping water onto the hardwood. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come here like this, but I didn't know where else to go. Lucas grabbed a towel from the bathroom, draped it around her shoulders. Talk to me. What's going on? Ava sank onto the couch, and Lucas sat beside her, close enough to offer comfort, but not crowding. She stared at her hands, water droplets falling from her hair onto the towel. I had dinner with my father tonight, she said finally. He wanted to talk about the company, about my responsibilities, about the future he has planned for me. And I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't sit there and nod and pretend I care about board meetings and shareholder expectations and all the things I'm supposed to care about. So what did you do? I told him the truth, that I hate it, that I've always hated it, that the only reason I took over any of it was because he expected me to, and I was too scared to disappoint him. Ava laughed bitterly. You should have seen his face, like I'd slapped him. What did he say? That I was being selfish, that I had responsibilities to the family, to the legacy, to people who depend on us, that I couldn't just walk away because I wasn't happy. She looked up at Lucas, eyes red and raw. And the worst part is, he's right. I am being selfish. There are hundreds of people whose jobs depend on decisions I make. I can't just throw that away because I'm unhappy. Lucas reached out, covering her hand with his. Being unhappy matters, Ava. Does it? When other people's livelihoods are at stake? Yes. It still matters. Ava's composure cracked. Tears spilled over, mixing with the rain on her cheeks. I'm so tired, Lucas. I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not. Tired of living this life I never chose. Tired of being scared all the time. Scared of what? Of this. She gestured between them. Of caring about someone and having it mean something. Of wanting things I'm not supposed to want. Of... Her voice broke. Of losing the only real thing in my life right now. Lucas's heart was hammering. You're not going to lose this. How do you know? Because I'm scared too, and I'm still here. Ava looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. You're really not going to run, are you? I thought about it, planned it even. But then I realized running meant losing you, and that's worse than being scared. The words hung between them, more honest than anything Lucas had said in years. Ava's breath hitched, and then she was leaning into him, pressing her face against his shoulder. Lucas wrapped his arms around her instinctively, feeling her shake with silent sobs. They stayed like that for a long time. Lucas held her while she cried, one hand rubbing slow circles on her back, the other cradling her head. She smelled like rain and something floral underneath, and he felt her gradually relax against him as the tears subsided. I'm getting your shirt wet, Ava mumbled against his shoulder. Don't care. I'm a mess. So am I. We match. That got a wet laugh out of her. She pulled back slightly, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes and smudged makeup. I ruined your evening. No, you didn't. You made it better. How is this better? Because you trusted me enough to fall apart in front of me. Lucas brushed a strand of wet hair from her face, the gesture more intimate than he'd intended. That means something. Ava's eyes searched his face, and Lucas felt the air between them shift. The space felt charged, heavy with possibility. Her gaze dropped to his mouth, then back up, and Lucas's breath caught. This was dangerous. This was exactly the kind of moment he'd spent 3 years avoiding, the kind that led to feelings and attachment and the potential for devastating loss. But Oliver's words echoed in his head. Being scared all the time is worse than taking a chance. Lucas leaned in slowly, giving Ava every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like everything clicking into place. The kiss was gentle, tentative, both of them testing boundaries. Ava's hand came up to rest against his chest, and Lucas cupped her face, her thumb brushing across her cheekbone. She tasted like salt from tears and something sweet underneath. When they finally pulled apart, Lucas rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. That was... Ava started. Yeah. We probably shouldn't... Probably not. Neither of them moved. Lucas, Ava's voice was shaky. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with someone without all the complications and expectations and everything that comes with who I am. So don't be that person. Just be Ava. It's not that simple. Why not? Because that person, the billionaire, the CEO, all of it, that's not separate from me. It's part of who I am, whether I like it or not. Ava pulled back, putting necessary distance between them. And eventually, you're going to see that side. The parts I can't hide forever. And I don't know what happens then. Lucas wanted to argue, wanted to say it wouldn't matter, but he understood her fear too intimately. He carried the same terror about his own broken pieces, the parts Emma's death had shattered that never quite healed right. So we figure it out, he said instead. Together. What if we can't? Then at least we tried. Ava studied him for a long moment. You mean that? I do. Even knowing it could end badly, that one of us could get hurt? Even knowing that. Lucas took her hand again. I'm tired of being safe, Ava. I'm tired of protecting myself from everything that might possibly hurt. That's not living. That's just surviving. When did you get so brave? About 5 minutes ago, still terrified, if that helps. Ava laughed, the sound watery but genuine. It does, actually. They sat in silence for a while, hands linked, both processing what had just shifted between them. The rain continued outside, steady against the windows. The apartment felt smaller somehow, like the walls had moved closer. I should probably change, Ava said eventually, gesturing to her soaked clothes. I'm freezing. Lucas hesitated, then, I have some stuff that might fit. Emma's things. I kept some of her comfortable clothes, just in case. He stopped, the words catching. Anyway, you could borrow something, if you want. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. He led her to his bedroom, to the closet he rarely opened. The section with Emma's clothes was smaller than it used to be. He'd donated most of it a year ago, but he'd kept some pieces. Soft sweaters, worn jeans, things that felt too personal to give away. Lucas pulled out a gray hoodie and sweatpants. These should work. Ava took them carefully, like they were precious. Thank you. Bathroom's through there. Take your time. While Ava changed, Lucas went to check on Oliver. His son was sprawled across the bed, one arm flung over his head, completely dead to the world. Lucas stood there for a moment, thinking about everything Oliver had said earlier. It's okay if you like her. I like her too. When Lucas returned to the living room, Ava was curled on the couch in Emma's clothes. They swallowed her smaller frame, making her look young and vulnerable. Her hair was still damp, but no longer dripping, pulled into a messy bun. These are really comfortable, she said as Lucas sat beside her. Emma always said comfort beats style. Smart woman. She was. Lucas felt the familiar ache at mentioning Emma, but it wasn't as sharp as usual. You would have liked her, I think. She had this way of seeing through people's defenses, made it impossible to hide. Sounds terrifying. It was. Also kind of great. Lucas smiled at the memory. She called me on my shit constantly. Never let me get away with anything. How did she die? Ava asked quietly. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Lucas had avoided this conversation for so long, had kept the details locked away where they couldn't hurt him. But sitting here with Ava in Emma's clothes, after the kiss that had just happened, holding back felt wrong. Car accident, he said. Drunk driver ran a red light. She was on her way home from work. The words came out flat, emotionless, the only way he could say them. Oliver was 2. He doesn't remember her at all, and I don't know if that's better or worse. I'm so sorry. Everyone's sorry doesn't change anything. Lucas realized how bitter that sounded and tried again. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be. I just spent so long being angry about it, and the anger doesn't help, but neither does anything else. Ava shifted closer, taking his hand. You don't have to be okay about it. You don't have to be over it. Everyone thinks I should be by now. Everyone's wrong. Lucas looked at their joined hands, then up at Ava. I shut down after she died, completely checked out for months. Oliver's grandparents took care of him because I couldn't. I couldn't get out of bed, couldn't eat, couldn't function. And then one day Oliver needed me, really needed me, and I realized I had to choose. Fall apart completely, or figure out how to survive for him. So you chose survival. I chose him. Everything else was just mechanics. Lucas paused. But I never chose to live again, just to survive. There's a difference. I know. Ava squeezed his hand. I've been surviving for a long time, too. Different reasons, but same result. Going through motions, checking boxes, never actually feeling anything. What changed? You did. She said it simply, like it was obvious. Meeting you, being around Oliver, having somewhere I could just be myself. It reminded me what living actually feels like. Lucas felt something shift in his chest, like a door opening after being locked for years. I don't know how to do this. Any of this. I don't know how to let someone in without being terrified they'll leave. I don't know how to be with someone without all my baggage getting in the way. Ava's eyes were bright again, but not from tears this time. But maybe we can not know together. That's the worst plan I've ever heard. You have a better one? Not even a little bit. They both laughed, the tension breaking. Ava leaned her head on Lucas's shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. It felt natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of just figuring it out. Can I ask you something? Ava said after a while. Sure. What are you most afraid of? About this? About us? Lucas didn't have to think about it. That I'll mess it up. That I'll be so focused on not losing you that I'll push you away anyway. That Oliver will get attached, and then you'll realize this is too much and leave. He paused. That I'll finally let myself feel something real again, and it'll destroy me when it ends. What makes you so sure it'll end? Everything ends eventually. That's bleak. That's realistic. Ava shifted to look at him. What if it doesn't end? What if we actually figure this out and it works? Lucas wanted to believe that. Wanted to imagine a future where this thing between them became something permanent, something solid. But hope felt dangerous after so long without it. I don't know if I can let myself think like that, he admitted. Try. Just for a second. Imagine it works out. Lucas closed his eyes, allowing himself to picture it. Coming home to Ava, building something together. Oliver having someone else who cared about him, someone who remembered his spelling quizzes and made him laugh. A life that felt full instead of just functional. The image was so appealing it hurt. Okay, he said quietly. I'm imagining it. How does it feel? Terrifying. But also good, really good, Ava smiled. That's something at least. They fell into comfortable silence, Ava's head on his shoulder, Lucas's arm around her. The rain had slowed to a gentle patter against the windows. The apartment felt different tonight, warmer, fuller, like it was finally becoming something other than just a place to exist. I should probably go soon, Ava said eventually, though she made no move to leave. You could stay. The words were out before Lucas could stop them. I mean, it's late, and you're comfortable, and… He stopped, feeling his face heat. Not like that. I just meant you could sleep on the couch. Or I could, and you could take my bed. I wasn't implying… Lucas? Yeah? I know what you meant. Ava sat up, smiling. And thank you, but I should go home. We're already moving fast enough without adding that to it. She was right, but Lucas was disappointed anyway. Okay. But Ava hesitated. Tomorrow's Saturday. Maybe we could do something, the three of us, if you want. Lucas thought about it. Thought about breaking the pattern they'd established, about letting this thing between them exist in daylight, about Oliver seeing them together and drawing his own conclusions. Yeah, he said. Oliver would love that. What about you? Would you love it? Yeah, I would. Ava stood, and Lucas walked her to the door. She paused in the threshold, looking smaller in the oversized clothes. Keep them, Lucas said when he saw her glance down at the hoodie. They look better on you anyway. You sure? I'm sure. Ava stepped closer, rising on her toes to press a soft kiss to his cheek. Thank you. For tonight. For everything. Anytime. She slipped into the hallway, but before her door closed, she turned back. Lucas? Yeah? I'm scared too. But I'm glad we're doing this anyway. Me too. He watched until her door clicked shut, then closed his own and leaned against it. His heart was racing, his mind spinning with everything that had happened. The kiss. The conversation. The promises neither of them was sure they could keep. Lucas checked on Oliver one more time, still sound asleep, then got ready for bed. As he lay in the dark, he replayed the evening over and over. For the first time in 3 years, he fell asleep without counting breaths or fighting panic or drowning in memories of what he'd lost. Instead, He thought about tomorrow, about possibilities, about taking chances even when they scared him, about Ava and the way she'd felt in his arms, and the terrifying, exhilarating possibility that maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. Saturday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine, and Oliver bouncing on Lucas's bed at 7:30, all elbows and knees and barely contained excitement. "Dad, wake up! Miss Ava texted and said we're going to the aquarium today." Lucas cracked one eye open, squinting against the light streaming through the window. "When did she text?" "Like 2 minutes ago. She said to tell you good morning and also that you sleep too much." Oliver grinned. "I told her you always sleep too much on weekends." "Traitor." Lucas sat up, running a hand through his hair. His phone showed 3 messages from Ava, the most recent time stamped at 7:27. "Good morning. Hope I didn't wake you. Oliver's up. He appeared at my door asking if today was still happening. He says you're still asleep. Tell him I said you need your beauty rest." Lucas smiled despite himself and typed back, "Some of us were awake past midnight. What time are we doing this?" The reply came immediately. "Whenever you're ready. I'm already caffeinated and prepared to look at fish for several hours." "Can we go now?" Oliver was already halfway to his closet, pulling out clothes. "Please?" "Let me at least shower first and eat something." "I'll make cereal." "That's what I'm afraid of." But Oliver was already gone, thundering down the hallway with the subtlety of a small tornado. Lucas heard cabinet doors opening, the refrigerator beeping its complaint at being left ajar, the distinctive sound of cereal being poured with more enthusiasm than accuracy. He should get up, should start the day, maintain some semblance of control over the morning chaos. Instead, he sat on the edge of his bed staring at his phone, thinking about last night. The kiss, the conversations, the way Ava had felt in his arms, the way she'd looked in Emma's clothes, the way everything had shifted from theoretical to terrifyingly real. Lucas had spent 3 years building walls, and in one evening Ava had walked right through them like they were made of paper. And the worst part, or maybe the best part, he couldn't decide, was that he'd let her. Had wanted her to. His phone buzzed again. "You still there?" "Oliver just informed me he's making breakfast unsupervised. Should I be concerned?" Lucas laughed and hauled himself out of bed. "Probably. I'll handle it." The kitchen looked like a cereal explosion. Oliver had apparently decided one bowl wasn't enough and had lined up 3 different varieties, creating some kind of marshmallow-heavy hybrid that violated several nutritional guidelines. That's not breakfast. That's a sugar coma waiting to happen. Oliver looked up, milk dribbling down his chin. "But it's all the best parts combined." "That's not how nutrition works." "You always say that." "Because it's always true." Lucas poured himself coffee, surveying the damage. "Eat what you want, but you're cleaning this up before we go anywhere." "Deal." Lucas leaned against the counter, sipping coffee that was too hot and too bitter, watching his son demolish a bowl of what was essentially candy pretending to be breakfast. Normal Saturday morning, except nothing about today felt normal. He texted Ava, "How about we meet you downstairs in an hour? Oliver needs to clean up his breakfast crime scene first." "Perfect. Gives me time to actually put on real clothes." "You weren't planning to wear pajamas to the aquarium?" "I was seriously considering it." "Comfort over style, right?" Lucas smiled, remembering he'd said that about Emma, remembering Ava in the hoodie last night, looking soft and real and completely herself. Right. The next hour was controlled chaos. Oliver cleaned the kitchen with the bare minimum effort required, then spent 20 minutes trying to find his favorite shoes before Lucas reminded him they were by the front door where he'd left them yesterday. Lucas showered, changed 3 times before settling on jeans and a navy sweater, and tried not to think about why he cared what he looked like. This was just the aquarium. Just a day out with Oliver and Ava. Nothing significant, nothing that required overthinking. Except it was significant, and he was definitely overthinking. They met Ava in the lobby at 9:15. She was wearing dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that made her hair look more red than brown, pulled back in a ponytail that showed off her face. Minimal makeup, comfortable boots, easy smile. Lucas's heart did something stupid in his chest. "Ready?" she asked, looking between them. "So ready." Oliver grabbed her hand without hesitation, and Ava's expression softened in a way that made Lucas's throat tight. The aquarium was 40 minutes away by subway, which meant 40 minutes of Oliver asking questions faster than either of them could answer, Did jellyfish have brains? How deep could submarines go? Were seahorses actually horses? Why were they called starfish if they weren't fish? Ava answered each question with patience and genuine interest, never talking down to Oliver, never dismissing his curiosity. She pulled out her phone at one point and looked up answers she didn't know, reading them aloud while Oliver hung on every word. Lucas watched the interaction and felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just Ava being polite to his kid. This was real engagement, real care. She actually enjoyed Oliver's company, actually valued his questions. The aquarium was packed with weekend crowds, families with strollers and groups of teenagers and elderly couples moving slowly through the exhibits. Lucas kept a hand on Oliver's shoulder, anchoring him in the chaos, while Ava navigated them through the entrance with practiced ease. "You've been here before," Lucas observed as she led them directly to the ticket counter, bypassing two separate information desks. "Once or twice. I have a membership." She said it casually, but Lucas caught the slight hesitation. Money again. The thing she tried to hide, tried to downplay, tried to pretend didn't define her. The membership got them fast-track entry, and suddenly they were inside, surrounded by blue-lit tanks and the ambient sound of water. Oliver's eyes went wide. "Can we see the sharks first?" "Sharks it is." Ava checked the map on her phone. "This way." They wound through corridors lined with tanks, Oliver pressing his face against glass to get closer to the fish, leaving nose prints that made Lucas wince. But Ava just laughed, pointing out different species, reading information placards aloud in dramatic voices that made Oliver giggle. The shark tank was massive, a tunnel that allowed visitors to walk through while sharks swam overhead. Oliver stood in the center, spinning slowly to take it all in, completely entranced. "That one's a hammerhead," Ava said, pointing. "See the shape of its head? Why is it shaped like that?" "Better vision. The eyes on the sides give it a wider field of view." "That's so cool." Oliver pressed against the glass ceiling, watching a shark glide past. "Do you think they know we're here?" "Probably, but we're not very interesting to them. Not food, not a threat, just weird things in their environment." Lucas stood slightly apart, watching Ava and Oliver together. Something about the scene felt important, felt like a turning point he hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just a day out. This was what life could look like if he let it. "Dad, look!" Oliver pointed at a smaller shark near the bottom. "That one's tiny." "That's a juvenile," Ava said. "It'll get bigger as it grows." "Like me." "Exactly like you." They moved through the exhibit slowly, Oliver's enthusiasm infectious. He wanted to see everything, touch every interactive display, read every information card. Lucas found himself relaxing into the day, the tension he'd been carrying since last night gradually easing. At the touch tank, Oliver spent 20 minutes carefully running his fingers over starfish and sea urchins, his face serious with concentration. Ava stood beside him, equally absorbed, asking the aquarium volunteer questions about care and feeding and habitat. "You're good with him," Lucas said quietly, when Oliver was distracted by a particularly large hermit crab. Ava glanced at him, something vulnerable in her expression. "He's easy to be good with. He's a great kid." "He is. But not everyone sees that. Most people just see a loud 6-year-old. Then they're not paying attention." Ava watched Oliver coax the hermit crab onto his palm. "He's curious and kind, and so smart it's actually intimidating sometimes. You've done an amazing job with him." The compliment made Lucas uncomfortable, same as always. "I'm just trying not to screw him up too badly." "You're doing better than that." Ava turned to face him fully. "He's happy, Lucas, really happy. That's because of you." Lucas didn't know what to say to that. He wanted to deflect, to minimize, to explain all the ways he was failing that she couldn't see. But Ava was looking at him with such sincerity that the words stuck. "Thank you," he managed finally. "I mean it." "I know." Oliver appeared then, his hands dripping wet, his shirt somehow also soaked. "Can we get lunch? I'm starving." They found the aquarium cafe, which was overpriced and underwhelming, but Oliver didn't care. He ordered chicken fingers and fries and chocolate milk, bouncing in his seat while they waited for food. "This is the best day," he announced to no one in particular. "Yeah?" Lucas smiled. "What makes it the best?" "Everything. The sharks and the touch tank and—" Oliver looked at Ava, then back at Lucas, something calculating in his expression. "And we're all together. Like a family." The word landed like a bomb in the middle of the table. Lucas felt his chest tighten, saw Ava's eyes widen slightly. Neither of them knew how to respond. I mean, not like a real family. Oliver backtracked quickly, apparently sensing he'd said something wrong. Just like the three of us hanging out. That's nice. That's all I meant. It is nice, Ava said gently. I'm having a really good time. Me too. Oliver's smile returned, crisis apparently averted. Can we go see the penguins after lunch? Absolutely. The moment passed, but Lucas felt it lingering. Oliver's innocent observation, his casual use of the word family, the way he'd included Ava without hesitation, as if it was natural, as if she belonged. Maybe she did. The thought should have terrified Lucas, should have sent him into a spiral of anxiety about moving too fast, about Oliver getting too attached, about all the ways this could go wrong. But sitting here in the crowded cafe, watching Ava help Oliver open his chocolate milk while laughing at some joke Lucas had missed, all he felt was calm. Not peace exactly, not the absence of fear, just the presence of something stronger than fear, something that felt like hope. They spent another 2 hours at the aquarium, seeing penguins and sea otters, and an enormous octopus that Oliver declared was his new favorite animal. By the time they emerged back into sunshine, it was past 3 and Oliver was dragging his feet, the sugar crash hitting hard. Someone needs a nap, Lucas observed. I'm not tired. Oliver's yawn undermined the claim. Sure you're not. Ava crouched down to his level. What if we head home and later we can order pizza and watch a movie? Would that work? Oliver perked up slightly. Can you stay for the movie? If your dad says it's okay. Oliver turned hopeful eyes on Lucas, and there was no universe where Lucas was going to say no to that expression. Yeah, she can stay for the movie. The subway ride back was quieter, Oliver dozing against Lucas's side while the train rattled through tunnels. Ava sat across from them, and Lucas caught her watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. Soft, almost wistful. What? He asked quietly, careful not to wake Oliver. Nothing, just... Ava smiled. You two are good together. It's nice to see. We have our moments. Lucas adjusted Oliver's position so his son's head rested more comfortably. Plenty of not good moments, too. Everyone does? That's just life. They lapsed into silence, the comfortable kind that came from spending a whole day together. Lucas felt the exhaustion of the outing settling into his bones, but it was a good tired, the kind that came from actually living instead of just going through motions. Back at the building, Lucas carried a half-asleep Oliver up to the apartment while Ava trailed behind. Oliver roused enough to change into pajamas and brush his teeth before collapsing into bed, already drifting off before Lucas finished tucking him in. Best day, Oliver mumbled, barely coherent. Love you, Dad. Love you too, bud. Love you too, Miss Ava. The words were slurred with sleep, probably unconscious, but they hung in the air like a declaration. Lucas froze, unsure how to respond, but Ava leaned in and gently smoothed Oliver's hair. Love you too, sweetheart. Sleep well? Oliver was out before she finished speaking. Lucas stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened, the casual intimacy of it, the way Ava had responded without hesitation. They retreated to the living room, and Lucas closed Oliver's door carefully behind them. I'm sorry about that, he said. He doesn't really understand. Don't apologize, Ava cut him off. He's 6. He says what he feels. That's actually kind of beautiful. It is, but it also complicates things. Does it? Ava settled onto the couch, curling into the corner in a way that had become familiar. Or does it just make them more honest? Lucas didn't have an answer for that. He sat beside her, leaving space, but not as much as he would have a week ago. Today was good, he said instead. It really was. Ava smiled. Oliver was so excited about everything. It was infectious. He liked having you there. Having us. Lucas stopped, the word family hovering unspoken. Together. He liked us being together. I liked it too. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the day settling around them. Lucas was exhausted, but didn't want Ava to leave. Wanted her to stay, to keep existing in this space with him, to make the apartment feel less empty. Can I ask you something? Ava said finally. Sure. What are we doing? Really? Because I know we said we'd figure it out as we go, but... She paused, searching for words. I need to know if this is real. If you're actually in this, or if you're still waiting for a reason to run. The question was fair. Lucas had been asking himself the same thing. I'm terrified, he admitted. Every minute of every day, I'm terrified this is going to blow up in my face, that I'm going to lose you, that Oliver's going to get hurt, that I'm making the biggest mistake of my life. That's not really an answer. I'm not done. Lucas turned to face her fully. But I'm also more terrified of not trying, of letting fear keep me from something that could be, he struggled for the right word, important. You're important to me, Ava. This is important to me. And yeah, I'm scared, but I'm in it anyway. Ava's eyes were bright. You mean that? I do. Even with all the complications? Even knowing I come with baggage and expectations and a life that's messy and demanding? Even with all of that? Lucas reached for her hand. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to be here. I am out here. Ava squeezed his hand. I've been here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I can't promise forever. Nobody can. But I can promise right now and tomorrow and as long as this works. She paused. Is that enough? Lucas thought about it. Thought about Emma and the promises they'd made that got broken through no fault of their own. Thought about Oliver and the future Lucas couldn't control. Thought about all the ways life could go wrong even when you did everything right. But he also thought about today, about Ava and Oliver laughing at the touch tank, about feeling like part of something instead of just an observer, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he could have this. Yeah, he said quietly, that's enough. Ava leaned in, and this time when they kissed, it felt different, less tentative, more certain, like they'd made a decision and were committing to it, consequences be damned. When they pulled apart, Ava rested her forehead against his. So what now? Now we order pizza and watch whatever movie Oliver inevitably demands when he wakes up. I meant bigger picture. I know what you meant. Lucas pulled back slightly to look at her. But I think maybe we just take it one day at a time. Today was good. Tomorrow we'll make good too. And we'll keep doing that until either it stops being good or we figure out what this is. That's very zen of you. I have my moments. Lucas stood, pulling her up with him. Come on, help me decide between pepperoni and vegetarian. Why not both? Because Oliver will only eat the pepperoni and then we'll have leftover vegetarian pizza for a week. Sounds like a problem for future us. Lucas smiled. Future us can handle it. They ordered both pizzas anyway, because Ava insisted and Lucas found he couldn't really deny her anything when she looked at him like that. While they waited for delivery, they sat on the couch and talked about nothing important. Weekend plans, weather predictions, the octopus at the aquarium that Oliver had loved. Normal conversation, easy conversation, the kind couples had when they were comfortable with each other. The word couple echoed in Lucas's mind. Were they a couple? They'd kissed twice, spent significant time together, made vague commitments about trying. Did that constitute a relationship? You're overthinking again, Ava observed. I can see it on your face. How do you know I'm not just thinking regular thoughts? Because you get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're spiraling. It's very distinctive. Lucas touched his forehead self-consciously. I don't spiral. You absolutely spiral. It's okay. I spiral too. Ava shifted closer. What's the thought? Just wondering what we are? What this is? Does it need a label? Eventually, yeah. Oliver's going to ask. Hell, he basically already asked at lunch. And what do you want to tell him? Lucas considered the question. What did he want? A week ago, he would have said nothing. Would have insisted on maintaining boundaries, keeping things undefined, protecting Oliver from getting attached. But today had changed something. Seeing Ava with Oliver, seeing how natural they were together, hearing his son say, love you like it was the simplest thing in the world, it made labels feel less scary and more necessary. I want to tell him you're my girlfriend, Lucas said, testing the word. Is that crazy? Are we too old for girlfriend and boyfriend? Ava laughed. We're 30-something, not 90. I think we can still use those words. So that's what you are? My girlfriend? If you want me to be. I do. Lucas said it firmly, with more certainty than he'd felt about anything in years. I really do. Then I am. Ava kissed him quickly, sweetly. Your girlfriend, who's about to help you eat way too much pizza. The delivery arrived 20 minutes later, and the smell woke Oliver like an alarm. He appeared in the living room still half asleep, hair sticking up in every direction, but immediately perked up at the sight of pizza boxes. "You got both kinds." "We did." Lucas opened the boxes on the coffee table. "Come eat." They sat on the floor around the coffee table, Oliver between Lucas and Ava, all three of them grabbing slices and arguing good-naturedly about which movie to watch. Oliver lobbied hard for an animated film he'd seen a dozen times. Ava suggested a nature documentary. Lucas stayed out of it, content to watch the negotiation. They landed on the animated movie, which Lucas had indeed seen many times but found he didn't mind watching again. Not when Oliver was singing along to the songs and Ava was laughing at the jokes and everything felt so completely normal. Halfway through, Oliver migrated from his spot on the floor to curl up between Lucas and Ava on the couch, his head on Lucas's lap, his feet in Ava's. She absently rubbed his ankle while watching the screen, and Lucas felt something in his chest expand. This was what he'd been missing. Not just companionship, not just someone to talk to in the evenings, but this feeling of completeness, of family. There was that word again. Oliver fell asleep before the movie ended, completely crashed, his mouth slightly open. Ava looked down at him and smiled. Should we move him to bed? Probably. Give it a few more minutes. Lucas didn't want to disturb the moment, didn't want to break whatever spell had settled over the apartment. The movie ended, credits rolling. Ava helped Lucas carry Oliver to his room, both of them moving quietly through the familiar routine. Shoes off, covers pulled up, dinosaur repositioned. Oliver barely stirred. Back in the living room, the pizza boxes sat empty on the coffee table, evidence of the evening scattered around them. Ava started cleaning up automatically, and Lucas joined her, the two of them moving around each other with ease. "I should probably go," Ava said as they finished, but she didn't move toward the door. "You could stay." Lucas said it before he could overthink it. "Not like that, just, it's late, and you're comfortable, and I like having you here." Ava studied him. "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." "Okay, but I'm stealing your couch." "It's all yours." Lucas grabbed pillows and a blanket from the closet, setting Ava up on the couch while she changed back into the hoodie from last night. Seeing her in it again made his heart do stupid things. "Comfortable?" he asked as she settled in. "Very." Ava pulled the blanket up. "Thank you for today, for all of this." "Thank you for being here." Lucas headed toward his bedroom, but paused in the doorway. "Ava?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad we're doing this, even though it's scary." "Me too." Her smile was visible even in the dim light. "Good night, Lucas." "Good night." Lucas lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing Ava was just down the hall. It felt significant somehow, having her here overnight, even if they were in separate rooms, like crossing a threshold they couldn't uncross. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Ava. "Still awake?" "Yeah, you?" "Obviously. I just texted you." Lucas smiled. "Can't sleep?" "Not really. Keep thinking about today." "Good thoughts or bad thoughts?" "Good ones. Really good ones. It's kind of overwhelming." Lucas understood that completely. "I know what you mean. Do you ever wonder if we're moving too fast?" "All the time. But then I think about how much time I've already wasted being scared, and fast doesn't seem so bad." There was a pause, then, "I'm falling for you, just so you know. And it's terrifying." Lucas stared at the message, his heart hammering. He could deflect, could make a joke, could avoid the vulnerability of matching her honesty. Or he could tell the truth. "I'm falling for you too, and you're right, it's terrifying. But we're doing it anyway." "Yeah, we're doing it anyway." "Good night, Lucas, for real this time." "Good night, Ava." Lucas set his phone down and closed his eyes, feeling something settle inside him. A decision made, a path chosen, a future that suddenly felt possible instead of just theoretical. He was falling for Ava Sterling, had been for months if he was honest, and instead of running from it, instead of protecting himself, he was choosing to fall. It was the scariest thing he'd done in years. It was also the rightest thing he'd done in years. And as sleep finally claimed him, Lucas let himself imagine tomorrow and the day after that, and all the days that could come if they were brave enough to reach for them. Lucas woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet laughter coming from his kitchen. For a disoriented moment, he thought he was dreaming, or that he'd somehow slipped back in time to before, when morning started with Emma humming off key while she made breakfast and Oliver's giggles echoed through the apartment. But this wasn't before. This was now. And the voice mixing with Oliver's wasn't Emma's. Lucas pulled on a shirt and padded down the hallway, stopping in the doorway to take in the scene. Ava stood at the stove in the oversized hoodie and sweatpants, her hair a messy knot on top of her head, flipping what looked like pancakes while Oliver sat on the counter beside her, swinging his legs and narrating some elaborate story about dinosaurs. And then the T-Rex said, "I'm the biggest and the strongest." But the Brachiosaurus was like, "Actually, I'm way taller than you." And then they had a competition. "What kind of competition?" Ava asked, sliding a pancake onto a plate. Who can eat the most leaves competition. Obviously. Obviously. How did it end? The Brachiosaurus won because he had a longer neck, but the T-Rex was a good sport about it. Ava laughed, and the sound did something to Lucas's chest, made it feel lighter and heavier at the same time. "Morning," he said, announcing his presence. Oliver's face lit up. "Dad, Miss Ava's making pancakes. She let me help crack the eggs, and I only got a little bit of shell in the bowl." "Just a little bit?" Lucas caught Ava's eye, and she smiled, barely noticeable. "Good morning." "Morning." Lucas moved into the kitchen, hyper-aware of the domestic scene they'd created. "You didn't have to cook." "I wanted to. Plus, someone woke me up at 6:30 asking if we could make breakfast." Ava ruffled Oliver's hair. "I'm pretty sure he was camped outside my door waiting for me to wake up." "I was not," Oliver protested, but his grin said otherwise. "I just happened to hear you moving around." "Uh-huh." Lucas poured himself coffee from the pot Ava had already made. "Since when do you wake up at 6:30 on a Sunday?" "Since there's pancakes." Oliver reached for the syrup, and Ava gently intercepted his hand. "Food first, syrup second. Otherwise, it's just syrup soup with pancake croutons." "That sounds good too." "It sounds like a stomachache," Lucas said, accepting the plate Ava handed him. 3 perfect golden pancakes, slightly crispy at the edges the way he liked them. "How did you know?" "You mentioned it once, months ago. You said the best pancakes were crispy on the outside." Ava shrugged like it was nothing, but Lucas felt the weight of it. She remembered. She paid attention. They ate breakfast at the small dining table Lucas rarely used, Oliver monopolizing the conversation with his dinosaur saga while Ava asked questions and Lucas just observed. This felt natural in a way that should have scared him. Waking up to find Ava in his kitchen, cooking breakfast, engaging with Oliver like she belonged there, it was exactly the kind of scenario he'd spent years avoiding. But sitting here, watching syrup drip down Oliver's chin while Ava laughed at something ridiculous he'd said, Lucas couldn't find the fear. Just a quiet acceptance that this was his life now. That he'd let someone in, and the world hadn't ended. After breakfast, Oliver lobbied hard to go to the park, and neither Lucas nor Ava had the heart to say no. They bundled up against the November cold, Ava borrowing one of Lucas's jackets because she hadn't planned on staying overnight and didn't have her own. The park was mostly empty, too cold for the usual weekend crowds. Oliver made a beeline for the playground, leaving Lucas and Ava to trail behind at a slower pace. "He's got energy for days," Ava observed, watching Oliver attack the monkey bars with determination. "Always has. I don't know where he gets it." Lucas shoved his hands in his pockets. "Thanks for this morning. For breakfast, for staying, for all of it. You don't have to keep thanking me." "I know, but I want to." Lucas paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm not used to this. Having someone here, being part of—" He gestured vaguely. "Whatever this is." "A relationship?" Ava supplied. "We can call it that. It's what it is." "Yeah, a relationship." Lucas tested the word again, found it fit better this time. "I'm not very good at those." "Neither am I, so we'll be bad at it together." "That's a terrible pitch." "It's honest." Ava bumped his shoulder with hers. "We're both kind of a mess, Lucas, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to be perfect at this. Just good enough? Just real." Oliver called out from the top of the climbing structure, waving frantically. "Dad! Miss Ava! Watch this!" He proceeded to slide down the pole with absolutely no technique, landing in a heap at the bottom. But he jumped up immediately, arms raised in triumph. "Did you see? I did it! We saw, Ava called back. Very impressive. Oliver ran off to attempt something else death-defying, and Lucas felt his perpetual low-grade anxiety spike. He's going to break something one of these days, he muttered. Probably, but he'll heal. Ava linked her arm through his. You can't protect him from everything. I can try. You can, but at some point you have to let him fall. Let him figure out what he's capable of. She paused. Same goes for you, you know. Lucas looked at her. What do you mean? I mean, you've been so focused on not falling, on keeping everything controlled and safe, that you've forgotten what it's like to actually live, to take risks, to trust that even if you fall, you'll survive it. I did fall. When Emma died, it almost destroyed me. But it didn't. You're still here. You survived it. Ava's voice was gentle but firm. And you'll survive whatever comes next, too. We both will. Lucas wanted to argue, wanted to list all the ways things could still go wrong. But watching Oliver attempt to jump from the swings at the highest point, giving Lucas a minor heart attack, he realized Ava was right. He couldn't control everything, couldn't prevent every possible hurt. All he could do was be present, be there to catch Oliver when he fell, be there for Ava when she needed him, be there for himself too, instead of constantly running from his own feelings. They stayed at the park for over an hour, until Oliver's nose was red from cold and even his boundless energy started to flag. The walk home was slower, Oliver dragging his feet, complaining about being tired while simultaneously insisting he wasn't tired at all. Back at the building, they ran into Mrs. Chen from 4C in the lobby. She was a sweet, elderly woman who'd lived there for decades and made it her business to know everyone. Lucas! And young Oliver! She beamed at them, then her eyes landed on Ava. And who's this? This is Ava, Lucas said, feeling oddly like a teenager introducing his girlfriend to his parents. She lives in 3D. Oh, I know Ava. Such a lovely girl, always very polite. Mrs. Chen's eyes sparkled with undisguised curiosity. I just didn't know you two were... She gestured between them meaningfully. We're friends, Lucas started, but Oliver interrupted. She's Dad's girlfriend. They kissed. Lucas felt his face heat up while Ava coughed to cover a laugh. Mrs. Chen looked absolutely delighted. Well, isn't that wonderful? It's about time, Lucas. You've been alone too long. Mrs. Chen, don't Mrs. Chen me. I've been watching you mope around this building for 3 years. About time you found someone. She patted Ava's arm. You're good for him. I can tell these things. Thank you, Ava managed, still fighting back laughter. They escaped to the elevator, and the moment the doors closed, Ava burst out laughing. They kissed, she mimicked in Oliver's serious voice. I'm sorry about that, Lucas said, mortified. Don't be, it's kind of perfect. Ava looked down at Oliver. You're a good wingman, you know that? Oliver grinned, proud of himself. What's a wingman? Someone who helps their friend get the girl. Oh, then yeah, I'm a great wingman. The elevator doors opened on their floor, and they all stepped out. For a moment, they stood in the hallway between their 2 apartments, and Lucas felt the weight of a decision approaching. Do you want to come in? He asked. We could make lunch, hang out for a bit. Ava hesitated, and Lucas saw something flicker across her face. Uncertainty, maybe, or fear. Actually, I should probably go home for a bit. I have some calls to make, some work stuff to handle. She looked genuinely apologetic. Rain check on lunch? Of course, yeah. Lucas tried to hide his disappointment and probably failed. We'll see you later? Definitely. Ava kissed Oliver on the forehead, then stood on her toes to kiss Lucas quickly. Thank you for this weekend. It was really special. She disappeared into her apartment before Lucas could respond, and he stood there for a moment, staring at her closed door. Is Miss Ava okay? Oliver asked, tugging on Lucas's hand. Yeah, bud, she just has stuff to do. But as they entered their own apartment, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that whatever fragile thing they'd built over the weekend had hit some kind of obstacle. The afternoon dragged. Lucas tried to focus on Oliver, on laundry that needed folding, and dishes that needed washing, and the mundane tasks of life. But his mind kept drifting across the hall, wondering what Ava was doing, whether the calls she'd mentioned were really work, or an excuse for space. Around 4, his phone buzzed. Ava. Can we talk? I mean, really talk, not just text. Lucas's stomach dropped. Those words never led anywhere good. Sure. When? Now? Can you come over? Or I can come there if that's easier. Give me 10 minutes. I'll have Oliver set up with a movie. Lucas got Oliver situated with his favorite animated film and enough snacks to keep him occupied, then crossed the hall to Ava's apartment. She opened the door immediately, like she'd been waiting. Her apartment was nicer than his, bigger, better furnished, with the kind of art on the walls that looked expensive. Lucas had only been inside a handful of times, and it always struck him as somehow impersonal, like a hotel room someone had lived in long enough to leave a few belongings but never really make it home. Thanks for coming, Ava said, gesturing to the couch. Lucas sat, his nerves jangling. What's going on? Ava paced for a moment, then sat in the chair across from him instead of beside him. The distance felt intentional. I've been thinking about this weekend, about everything that's happened between us. She twisted her hands together, and I need to be completely honest with you about something. Here it comes, Lucas thought. The part where she realizes this is too complicated, too much, too fast. The part where she pulls away. Okay, he said carefully. My father called this morning, while you were still asleep. Ava took a breath. He wants me to come back to San Francisco, take over more of the company operations. He's stepping down in 6 months, and he wants me there full time. Lucas felt the words land like physical blows. San Francisco, 3,000 miles away. The end of whatever this was before it really began. What did you tell him? His voice came out flat. I told him I needed time to think about it. Ava looked at him directly. I told him I had reasons to stay here. Important reasons. Me. You. Oliver. This life I've built here that actually feels like mine. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. But Lucas, I can't keep running from my responsibilities forever. There are people depending on me, a company that needs leadership, and She stopped, struggling. I don't know what to do. Lucas wanted to tell her to stay. Wanted to make promises about building a life together, about figuring it out, about whatever it took to keep her here. But he couldn't. Because he understood responsibility, understood the weight of obligation and the impossibility of walking away from people who depended on you. What do you want? He asked instead. Not what your father wants, not what the company needs. What do you want? I want both. Ava's voice broke. I want to be here with you and Oliver. I want to wake up in your kitchen making pancakes and going to the aquarium and all the normal things we did this weekend. But I also want to not feel like I'm abandoning everything I've built, everyone who's counting on me. Those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. Don't they? I can't run a company from New York, can't split my time between 2 coasts, and expect to do either thing well. Ava wiped at her eyes angrily. And I can't ask you to uproot your entire life for me. You have Oliver to think about, his school, his stability. He's already lost so much. I can't be the reason he loses more. Lucas felt something settle in his chest, a clarity he hadn't expected. What if you're not the reason he loses anything? Lucas leaned forward. What if you're the reason he gains something? Lucas, listen to me. I've spent 3 years protecting Oliver from anything that might hurt him. Kept him in this bubble where nothing could touch us, nothing could disrupt our routine. And you know what? He was fine, safe. But he wasn't happy, not really happy. He seems happy to me. He is now, because of you. Lucas's voice was steady, certain. You've shown him what it looks like when someone cares without expecting anything in return. When someone shows up and stays and actually wants to be there. That's not something to protect him from. That's something worth fighting for. Ava was crying now, tears streaming down her face. You don't know what you're saying. Moving across the country, starting over, that's huge. That's not something you decide in one conversation. You're right. It's not. Lucas stood, moving to kneel in front of her chair, taking her hands. So let's have more conversations. Let's figure it out together. But don't make this decision alone because you're trying to protect me or Oliver. We get a say in this too. What if it doesn't work? What if we move out there and everything falls apart? What if we don't try and spend the rest of our lives wondering what if? Lucas squeezed her hands. I'm scared too, Ava. I'm terrified. But I'm more scared of losing you because we were too afraid to take a chance. Ava laughed through her tears. That's what Oliver said. That being scared all the time is worse than taking a chance. Smart kid. He gets it from you? Definitely not from me. I've been an idiot about this whole thing. Lucas brushed tears from her cheeks. But I'm done being an idiot. I'm done letting fear make my decisions. So here's what I'm saying. If you need to go to San Francisco, then we'll figure out San Francisco. We'll talk to Oliver, we'll research schools, we'll make a plan. Or if you decide to stay here and find another way to handle the company, we'll support that too. Whatever you choose, we're in it with you. We? Me and Oliver. We're a package deal. Ava pulled him up and into her arms, burying her face in his neck. Lucas held her while she cried, one hand rubbing circles on her back, feeling his own eyes burning. This was it. This was the moment where he either let fear win or chose something bigger than fear, chose hope, chose love, even if he wasn't quite ready to name it yet. I don't deserve this, Ava mumbled against his shoulder. Don't deserve you. That's not how this works. We don't get what we deserve. We get what we're brave enough to reach for. Lucas pulled back to look at her. And I'm reaching for you, if you'll let me. Ava kissed him then, salt from tears mixing with the taste of her, and Lucas felt something in his chest crack open. Not breaking, expanding, making room for something he'd thought he'd lost forever. The ability to love someone without needing them to fill the Emma-shaped hole in his life. The ability to choose a future instead of just surviving the present. The ability to believe that even after loss, even after pain, there could be something new and good and worth fighting for. When they finally pulled apart, Ava was smiling through tears. I need to think about this. Really think about what makes sense. Take all the time you need. Will you help me? Figure out the logistics, talk through options? Of course. They spent the next hour on the couch. Ava's laptop open between them, looking at schools in San Francisco, neighborhoods, cost of living, making lists of pros and cons, talking through scenarios. It was practical and unromantic and exactly what they needed. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Just two people trying to figure out how to build a life together despite complications. Around 6, Lucas got a text from Oliver. Dad, where are you? I'm hungry, and the movie ended. I should get back, Lucas said reluctantly. Bring him over. We'll order dinner, make a night of it. Ava closed her laptop. I want him part of this conversation too. He deserves to know what we're thinking. So Lucas retrieved Oliver, who was thrilled at the invitation and immediately made himself comfortable on Ava's couch, like he belonged there. Are we having a family meeting? Oliver asked, looking between them. Lucas glanced at Ava, who nodded. Yeah, bud, kind of. We need to talk to you about something important. Am I in trouble? No, nothing like that. Lucas sat beside Oliver while Ava took the chair across from them. You know how Ava has a company she runs? A business? Yeah, she's rich. Oliver said it matter-of-factly, like it was just a characteristic, no different than having brown hair. Ava laughed. I guess that's one way to put it. Well, my father wants me to move to California to help run the company full-time, and I'm trying to decide what to do. Oliver's face fell. You're leaving? Maybe. I don't know yet. Ava leaned forward. But if I did go, I was thinking maybe you and your dad could come with me, if that's something you'd want. Oliver looked at Lucas, confused. Move to California? Like, leave here? It's just one option we're thinking about, Lucas said carefully. Nothing's decided yet, but we wanted to know how you'd feel about it. Oliver was quiet for a long moment, his face serious in the way it got when he was really processing something. Would I have to leave my school? He asked finally. You'd go to a new school there. We'd find a really good one. Would we live near the beach? We could, Ava said. Parts of San Francisco are right by the ocean. What about my friends? You'd make new friends, and we could visit your old friends sometimes. Oliver chewed on his bottom lip, thinking, would you and Miss Ava be together? Like, for real together? Lucas felt his heart squeeze. Yeah, bud. For real together. And we'd all live in the same house? Probably. If that's okay with you. Oliver looked at Ava. Would you still make pancakes? Every Sunday, Ava promised, her voice thick. Okay. Oliver nodded, decided. Then I think we should go. It sounds like an adventure. Lucas stared at his son, amazed by his resilience, his ability to embrace change instead of fear it. You're sure? This is a big decision. I know, but Miss Ava needs to do her job, and we're a family now, right? Families stick together. There was that word again, family. And this time, hearing Oliver say it with Ava sitting right there, it didn't feel premature or scary. It felt exactly right. Ava was crying again, smiling through it. You're an amazing kid, you know that? That's what Dad always says. Oliver grinned. So when do we move? Can I bring all my dinosaurs? We'd never leave the dinosaurs, Lucas assured him, but we have a lot to figure out first. This might take a while. That's okay. I'm patient. He absolutely was not patient, but Lucas appreciated the effort. They ordered Chinese food and spent the evening talking through possibilities, Oliver contributing ideas that ranged from practical to completely absurd. By the time Lucas carried a sleepy Oliver back to their apartment around 9, they'd made actual progress. Not decisions yet, but plans for decisions. At his door, Lucas turned back to find Ava watching from her doorway. Thank you, she said softly. For today. For being willing to even consider this. Thank you for letting us in on the decision, for not just making it alone. We're a team now. Teams make decisions together. Lucas smiled. Yeah, we are. That night, after Oliver was asleep, Lucas lay in bed thinking about everything that had changed in such a short time. A month ago, he'd been surviving. Going through motions, protecting himself, existing in a carefully controlled bubble. Now he was planning to move across the country with a woman he'd known less than 2 years, preparing to uproot his son's entire life, taking a risk so enormous it should have sent him into a panic spiral. But all he felt was calm. Not the absence of fear, he was still scared, still worried about all the ways this could go wrong. But underneath the fear was something stronger, something that felt like hope, mixed with determination, mixed with the quiet certainty that this was right. His phone buzzed. You still awake? Yeah, thinking. Good thoughts or spiral thoughts? Surprisingly good ones. Want to share? Lucas considered, then typed. Just thinking about how a year ago I would have said this was impossible, that I'd never let anyone in again, never take a risk like this. And now I'm planning to move across the country for someone I'm falling in love with. He hit send before he could second guess the last part. The response came quickly. Falling in love with? Yeah. Is that okay? It's more than okay, because I'm falling in love with you too. Lucas stared at the words, feeling that expansion in his chest again. This was real. This was happening. And instead of running from it, he was running toward it. We're really doing this, aren't we? Looks like it. You having second thoughts? Not even a little bit. Good. Because I already started looking at houses. Found one with a backyard big enough for all of Oliver's dinosaurs. Lucas laughed, the sound loud in the quiet apartment. You're serious. I'm always serious about dinosaurs. And about you. I'm serious about you too. I know. That's what makes this work. They texted for another hour, plans and jokes and confessions that came easier in the dark. When Lucas finally fell asleep around midnight, it was with his phone still in his hand and a smile on his face. The next few weeks were a blur of planning and logistics. Lucas gave notice at work, weathered his boss's disappointed lecture about wasted potential. Started researching schools in San Francisco, neighborhoods that would work for their cobbled-together family. Ava flew out twice to look at houses, bringing back photos and videos for Lucas and Oliver to review. They settled on a place in the Sunset District, 4 bedrooms, a yard, close to good schools, and the beach Oliver had insisted on. Breaking the news to Mrs. Chen was harder than expected. She cried and hugged Lucas and made him promise to visit. Mr. Patterson from 3B grunted something that might have been good luck. The building super just asked when they needed the final walkthrough. Oliver handled it all with remarkable grace, excited about the adventure, sad about leaving, but not devastated. Kids were resilient like that. Lucas tried to take a lesson from his son's flexibility. The last night in the apartment, after everything was packed and the movers were scheduled for morning, Lucas walked through the empty rooms one final time. This place had been his sanctuary after Emma died. The place where he'd learned to survive, where he'd raised Oliver through toddlerhood into childhood. But it had also been his prison. The place where he'd hidden from life, from risk, from the possibility of feeling anything too deeply. He was ready to leave it behind. Ava appeared in the doorway, looking tired but happy. They'd spent the day packing her place too, coordinating the chaos of combining 2 lives into one. You okay? She asked. Yeah, just saying goodbye. To the apartment or to the life you had here? Both, I think. Lucas looked at her. Thank you. For what? For showing up. For being stubborn enough to keep coming back even when I tried to push you away. For making me believe I could have this again. Ava crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Thank you for letting me in. For being brave enough to try. They stood there in the empty living room, holding each other, and Lucas felt the weight of the past 3 years finally lift. He would always miss Emma, would always carry that loss. But it didn't have to define him anymore. He could miss her and love Ava. Could honor what he'd lost while embracing what he'd found. Could be a father who protected his son and also showed him what it looked like to be brave. The next morning, they loaded into Ava's car. She'd insisted on driving them to the airport while the movers handled the furniture. Oliver chattered the entire drive, asking questions about the flight, about their new house, about whether California dinosaurs were different from New York dinosaurs. At the airport, going through security, boarding the plane, Lucas felt surreal, like he was watching someone else's life instead of living his own. But then Ava squeezed his hand and Oliver demanded the window seat, and suddenly it was real again. They were doing this. Actually doing this. Somewhere over Kansas, Oliver fell asleep against the window, and Ava leaned her head on Lucas's shoulder. Still no second thoughts? She asked quietly. Not one. Lucas kissed the top of her head. You? Terrified. But good terrified. Is there such a thing as good terrified? There is when you're terrified of the right things, not of failure or loss, just of how much you care. Ava tilted her head to look up at him. I love you. Just so that's clear. Lucas's breath caught. They'd said they were falling in love, had texted about it in the dark, but this was different. This was daylight and clarity and choice. I love you too, he said, and meant it completely. Yeah? Yeah. Lucas glanced at Oliver sleeping peacefully, then back at Ava. You and him, you're my family now. That's not falling, that's already landed. Ava's eyes were bright. We're your family. You're my family. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And Lucas felt it again, that sense of rightness, of being exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. The plane touched down in San Francisco just before sunset, the city spreading out below them in shades of gold and orange. Oliver pressed his face to the window, gasping at the view. It's so pretty. It is, Ava agreed. Welcome home. Home. Lucas tested the word in his mind, found it fit. Not because of the city or the house waiting for them, but because home wasn't a place anymore. It was Ava's hand in his, Oliver's excitement about new adventures, the family they'd chosen to become. They collected their luggage, found the car Ava had arranged, and drove through city streets toward their new life. Oliver pointed out every interesting thing they passed, the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance, the colorful houses climbing steep hills, a park that promised future exploration. The house was exactly like the photos, but better in person. Warm and welcoming, with big windows and hardwood floors, and that yard Oliver had requested. Their furniture wouldn't arrive until tomorrow, but Ava had arranged for air mattresses and basic supplies. Can I see my room? Oliver was already halfway up the stairs. Top of the stairs, second door on the left, Ava called after him. They heard his footsteps thundering overhead, then a whoop of joy. There's a window seat! Dad, there's a window seat! Lucas smiled. I think he approves. Good, because I may have specifically chosen this house based on that window seat. Ava slipped her arms around his waist. Wanted to make sure he had something special. You're amazing. You know that? I'm in love. Makes me do crazy things like buy houses based on 6-year-old approval. Best kind of crazy. They stood in their new living room, empty except for air mattresses still in their packaging and each other, and Lucas felt peace settle over him. Not the absence of struggle. There would be challenges ahead, adjustments to make, hard days to navigate, but the presence of something worth struggling for. Oliver appeared at the top of the stairs. Can we order pizza? I'm starving and I want to eat it in my room with the window seat. We can absolutely order pizza, Lucas confirmed, but you're eating it at a table like a civilized human. What if I promise to be really careful? Nice try. They ordered pizza, ate it on the floor of the empty dining room, and talked about plans for the next day. Furniture arrival, school registration, exploring the neighborhood. Normal things that felt extraordinary because they were doing them together. After dinner, Lucas got Oliver settled on one of the air mattresses in his new room, running through their usual bedtime routine in this unfamiliar space. "Dad?" Oliver said as Lucas was about to turn off the light. "Yeah, bud? I'm glad we moved here. I'm glad we're all together now." Lucas's throat tightened. "Me too." "Do you think Mom would be happy? About Miss Ava?" The question caught Lucas off guard, but he answered honestly. "Yeah, I think she would be. Your mom wanted us to be happy. She'd like Ava." "I think so too." Oliver yawned, already drifting. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, bud." Lucas found Ava in what would be their bedroom, standing at the window looking out at the city lights. She'd changed into the same gray hoodie from that first night, and Lucas's heart did that stupid flip again. "He okay?" she asked as he came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "More than okay." He asked if Emma would be happy about us. "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That she'd want us to be happy. That she'd like you." Lucas rested his chin on Ava's shoulder. "Was that okay?" "I don't want to—" "It's perfect." Ava turned in his arms. "She's part of your story. Part of Oliver's story. That doesn't change just because I'm here now." "I know, but I also know it's complicated." "Everything's complicated doesn't mean it can't also be good." Ava kissed him softly. "I'm not trying to replace her. I'm just trying to be part of what comes next." "You are. You're everything that comes next." They stood there for a long time, holding each other in the empty room, while the city hummed with life outside their window. Lucas thought about all the nights he'd stood alone in his old apartment, staring at nothing, wondering if this feeling would ever return. The feeling of being connected to someone, of being part of something bigger than just survival, of loving and being loved in return. He'd thought that was over for him, thought Emma's death had closed that door permanently. But standing here with Ava, in this new city, in this new life they were building together, Lucas understood something fundamental. Love wasn't finite. Losing Emma didn't mean he'd used up his capacity to love. It just meant he'd learned how precious it was, how worth fighting for. And the fear would always be there. Fear of loss, of pain, of all the ways this could go wrong. But fear didn't have to be in control anymore. It could just exist alongside everything else, alongside hope and joy and the quiet certainty that some risks were worth taking. "What are you thinking?" Ava asked, pulling back to look at him. "Just that I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy." Lucas smiled. "I wasn't sure I'd ever feel this way again. And now? Now I'm sure. About you, about us, about all of it." He cupped her face in his hands. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for being patient while I figured this out. Thank you for letting me in, for choosing this even though it scared you. Best decision I ever made." They set up their air mattress and lay down together, the sounds of their new city filtering through the windows. Ava curled into Lucas's side, her head on his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her. This was it. This was the life he'd been too afraid to reach for. And it wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. There would be hard days ahead, moments of doubt, struggles they couldn't anticipate. But there would also be mornings waking up together. Oliver's laughter filling the house, pancakes on Sundays and quiet evenings, and all the small moments that made up a life, a real life. Not just surviving, but actually living. Lucas closed his eyes, Ava's breathing evening out as she drifted towards sleep, and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Not just peace or contentment or relief, but genuine excitement for tomorrow, for what came next, for all the possibilities waiting for them. He'd spent so long holding his breath, waiting for something to shatter. But lying here with Ava in his arms, in their new home, with Oliver safe down the hall, Lucas finally exhaled. Finally let himself believe that this was real, that he deserved it, that even after loss and pain and years of just trying to survive, life could offer something soft and real and unexpectedly beautiful. And as sleep claimed him, Lucas's last thought wasn't about what he'd lost or what could go wrong. It was about what he'd found, about the family they'd chosen to become, about the future stretching out ahead of them, uncertain but full of promise. About love, how it survived grief, how it grew in unexpected places, how it gave you the courage to try again even when trying felt impossible. Lucas had spent 3 years living in silence, afraid to disrupt the fragile peace he'd constructed. But this new silence was different. Not empty or lonely or weighted with fear, just calm. Shared with someone who understood him. A silence that held space for both pain and hope, for both past and future. A silence that whispered not of ending, but of beginning. Of everything they could still become if they were brave enough to reach for it. And Lucas Hayes, who had spent so long being afraid, finally chose to be brave.